Welcome to episode 25 of the Been There, Done That podcast. And you are joined by Lily Brazel online via the Zoom and myself, Matthew Deloya. My last piece, Upstream, spread far and wide. It hit home with past and present elite athletes and coaches from across the globe, parents, young hockey players, spectators, businesswomen and men, academics and more, all of whom cried out versions of "Me Too." Upstream was full of heart. I laid it all out just so I could breathe again. I exhaled hard, and my next inhale was full of connection and conversation from the most unexpected places. I shared my truth, and so people began to share theirs with me. As stories, insights, and worries from readers flooded my screen, something became very clear. The issues I raised in Upstream extended far beyond hockey at the elite level. The issues trickled into all levels, all sports, all countries, all industries. As I read the emails and messages, I felt the pain of every story, and I sensed there was a united cry for help, for better. Through the power of words and storytelling, the murky waters that I had reached upstream started to clarify, and a reflection emerged. I realized that sport is a mirror of society, and at the moment, the reflection isn't great. I sensed it was time to challenge the reflection in the mirror. So I sat with all the emails, all the words, all the stories, and I felt. I let myself sit with my pain and others' pain, with the others' hopes and my own. And after all the feeling and sitting, I began to think. I have to feel before I can think. Something my partner often finds frustrating. But it's how I make sense of things. I'm kinesthetic. I have to feel it before I can know it. In my thinking, I wondered, what is sport reflecting back at us? When we stand in front of the mirror, when we look at sport, what is it showing us about the world? After much time in my thinking phase and staring into the mirror, it became evident that what is happening in sport is reflective of what is happening in the world at a larger and deeper scale. In the mirror of sport, 4 reflections have emerged that I believe require deep exploration. I've decided to put names to these reflections as a starting point for making sense of them. The inequality of gender, the mining of athletes, the calamity of excellence, and the zoning of violence. Each of these reflections deserve their own space to be explored, analysed and solved, but here are my opening thoughts. The inequality of gender. When we look at sport, we see men's sport dominate the media and profits. When we look at sport, we see 9% of females in coaching positions at the Olympics, when the athlete cohort is 50-50. What does this show us about the world? The mining of athletes. When we look at sport, we see its high economic value dictate decision-making. We see a valuable resource that is mined, marketed, and sold for the benefit of the few. What is this showing us about the world? The calamity of excellence. When we look at sport, we see the weight of winning at all costs destroy the human inside the athlete. When we look at sport, we see the just do it narrative disrespect individual differences and needs. What does this show us about the world? The zoning of violence. When we look at sport, we see competition, aggression, physicality, and blood championed and cheered. We see violence zoned into sport to allow for peaceful existence. What does this zoning of violence into places where we can either cheer for it or be free from it show us about the world? So what is sport showing us? The mirror that sport holds reveals an ugly truth about the world. A world where we are still far from achieving real gender equality and dismantling the myths, the stereotypes, and categorization of gender. A world where profits and performance trump our people and our planet. A world where violence is zoned into the fringes of our cities or into distant places around the globe or onto sporting fields so that we can experience the peace and attainment of our privilege affords us. These reflections require much more of my thinking And that's what I sense I need to do. Sit, feel, think, and write in the hope of finding tangible solutions to create a blueprint for sport which can lead us into the world we also desperately need. Why? Because I've also been curious to understand the world around me rather than accept it as it is. And I feel a sense of duty to understand and learn from my experience in sport and those of other athletes too. And because sport has extreme influence with its global platform and unconditional support from fans. It has a voice and a power that has the ability to affect large scale change. It offers a lot of good to the world, but at the moment, the power and potential of sports good is encumbered by its failure to challenge the world it reflects. It's time for sport to show up and challenge these reflections, to challenge gender inequality, to challenge our profit and performance-driven society, to challenge where we have put violence, and maybe, just maybe, break some damn mirrors. And that was written by Lily, yours truly. Quite an emotional piece, and I encourage those who to go into your blog and to read what you wrote or what you mentioned at the start, upstream, which is quite an emotional piece as well. Hearing that back, does your thoughts change? Because you wrote that about 10 months ago. About time. Has your thoughts changed at all, or has it evolved much from that piece?
It's funny, when you told me that you were going to read Mirrors, I was like, oh shit, I forgot I wrote that. And I went back and read it, and I was like, yeah, damn, I made some really good points in that. And just as you're reading it, my mind definitely hasn't shifted on the thoughts that I put together there. And that was about 10 months ago, and there's still thoughts I've been exploring and writing about more offline than online at the moment. But yeah, definitely they still hold a lot of truth for me.
Yeah, well, I think when especially because I was going through your blog, and that definitely hit a bit of a tone with me as well, just from basically because my background is in strength and conditioning in team sports as well, and it kind of I sit in a weird spot, like also like treating like an athlete and the individual, seeing an individual person and spending a lot of time in the gym, sometimes without coaches around. You get to know an athlete well, but then also I see it on the performance coaching side of it as well, and you want to try to get the most and be as competitive as I am. You want to win and try to get as most out of them as you can. So it's kind of a awkward balance, but it's good to kind of hear from an athlete's perspective how it affects them, I guess, because it was quite an emotional piece, I guess, from your end as well. So I guess probably the best way to kind of get into it is probably go back to where it started for you.
Yeah. Well, I started playing hockey when I was 7. My sister played as well, and my mom was just really keen to get us to try a team sport. And we were dancers, and I was really bad, so mom was like, "Go play hockey, give it a shot." And turned out, we were pretty good at it. My sister played junior Aussie teams as well, and my brothers played for New South Wales at the AHL level. So
So you're not from Perth?
No, not from Perth. From New South Wales. Grew up in Sydney.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
In the city, you weren't country.
No, I'm not a country person, which is a bit odd for a hockey player. Most of the girls from New South Wales or other states often hail from the country, but yeah, grew up in the big city of Sydney.
And it was a pedigree in your family, was there? A bit of, you kind of ran
my grandpa, mum's dad started the St. Patrick's Hockey Club in Canberra, and so he's a bit of a well-known name down in the old Canberra hockey circles. So mum played, wasn't very good, sorry mum, but she played, and so did my uncles. But dad was an AFL player, a pretty good one, and when it came time for us to stop dancing, mum looked for the local hockey club and signed us all up.
Oh, wow. And that started when you were 7, is that right? What you said?
Yeah, wow. 7.
And just exponential growth, like you went obviously club, and as you kind of got older, you got selected for representative programs and all of that.
Yeah, I sucked my first year. I had no idea which way was what, but then it all sort of clicked, and yeah, quite quickly, I was playing, in representative teams in New South Wales, then making my first New South Wales team, and often playing a couple of age groups up as well. So broke mum and dad's bank accounts with lots of national championships around Australia. And then I made my first junior Aussie team when I was 16.
Oh goodness! So did you get picked up in the N-Swiss program for hockey state?
Yeah, I think I started with N-Swiss at 15.
Yeah, wow, dude, that's early.
Yeah, it was quite early. At 15 I was finishing year 10.
Yeah.
And then I actually did my year 11 and 12 via distance education. I didn't go to school. Hockey became like pretty serious, was traveling a lot, and also just didn't like school people. I was a nerd. I loved school, but I found myself much more, I much preferred my own company, and taught myself at home basically.
Yeah, right. So that was, well, so who taught you home, like your parents or?
No, it's like an online HSC program that I did.
Ah, there you go. And that allowed you to still compete hockey at a high level.
Yeah, allowed me to travel a fair bit with hockey, not miss out on school, and get, go to early morning trainings, sleep, then do schoolwork when I wanted, rather than trying to rush to and from school and training.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never really heard of anyone doing that. Or do you feel like that helped at all? Or do you feel like you missed out on anything?
No, I don't really think I missed out. Like, I'm sure I would have had fun if I went to school, but I didn't really connect very much. I did connect with my school friends, but I just much preferred my hockey friends and wanted to spend as much time at hockey. And I was a pretty like self-starter, and found like setting up my own school program pretty easy. It didn't really need too much monitoring.
And you did all that when you were 16, 17?
Yeah.
Oh, holy shit. If I was, I wouldn't even bloody tie my shoelaces 16.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's wild. So were you obviously that young age, it was 100% into hockey?
Yeah. I was, obsessed.
There was nothing else.
Nothing else.
It was all the eggs in that basket, or were you at school trying to push, like you were working things out for a post-career?
I was, really into my education as well. Like I wanted to get a good HSC mark. Yeah. Not that I got anything amazing. Like I'm not crazy book smart, intelligent. But yeah, still I like being good at things. So I wanted to do well at school. And I was really into architecture and also politics, which the first degree I went into was architecture. Yeah. Turned out I wasn't so good at maths, which I already knew, but didn't want to do so much mathematics. So then I went into a Bachelor of Arts in politics.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. What was that? Was there anything that was in that time that drew you to that kind of field? Like, was there anything going on in the world that interested you in that sort of area? Do you remember?
That was about 2014, 15. The only thing I remember was that I just wanted to write essays. That's all I wanted to do. And I maybe had this dream that I was going to be like the next female prime minister. So I was like, I'm going to go study politics. Not that I wasn't into politics, but I just liked writing and wanted to be a prime minister, which I don't now anymore.
So you don't follow politics at the moment? Anything that's going on?
I do. Like I'm always keep an eye out, see what's going on. But I think in Australia we're generally quite turned off or ignorant to politics.
I believe so too. I like to keep an ear out what's going on over in America, just because I know they're such a big world player, and generally whatever happens over there trickles down to its allies, which is us. So yeah, I always try to keep an ear out. I'm not sure if you know, it's called the Breaking Points podcast, and they generally do a pretty good overview of American politics and what's going on. It's like an unfiltered news network. They don't have any. They got two co-hosts. One's like the left, and one's on the right, and they give unbiased opinions. And it's not really marketed. No big money players, like no sponsors or anything like that. They're all kind of on there. So
what's it called?
The Breaking Points.
The Breaking Point.
By Crystal and Saga. Yeah, write it down. It's actually, and they 3 podcasts a week, and they do like a subscription. Like you can subscribe to them on Substack, and you can get like no ads and all this sort of stuff. You get the video like a day early and that sort of stuff. So yeah. So when did you get selected into the national program? Was that a couple of years after?
I thought it was going to be a couple of years after. Probably had a bit of an ego when I was younger. Humble, but I had a little bit of like a hidden ego. So I moved to Perth when I was 18. So I finished my HSC, finished year 12. Next year, I moved to Perth. They used to have these like junior scholarships.
Yep.
So when you move to Perth in the Hockeyroos squad, you're on like an AAS scholarship.
Yep.
At that time, this was 2013, they were running sort of a bit of a more junior pathway thing where they would have maybe there was 4 or 5 of us on junior scholarships.
Yep.
So I went over for a year, wasn't in the Hockeyroos squad, but was training with them, and I thought like, yeah, this is gonna be my big break. Like I was, gonna play for the Hockeyroos that year. We had our Junior World Cup in Germany that year. I think we came 6th. We did terribly. And then after that, I had an operation on both my calves. I had compartment syndrome, so I had that sorted out.
Yeah, ouch.
For anyone that doesn't know what that is, it's when your calves, when you exercise, they basically turn to rock, and it's really painful.
Yeah, you have to cut it to get it released. Cut the muscle open to release the pressure.
Yeah.
Do you have a nasty scar?
I do. But I quite like them.
How big? How long are they? Do you have to measure the centimeters? Oh,
I haven't measured it, but like, longer than a finger.
Yeah.
So yeah, that didn't go to plan. I ended up, had the operation. I moved back to Sydney. And my sort of pathway towards playing for the Hockeyroos took a bit of a different direction. My personal life was a bit of a mess, had this operation, and was just, 18, 19, 20-year-old trying to sort out the mess of my life. So I didn't end up debuting for the Hockeyroos until I was 22.
Okay, wow. So there was a bit of, you said just before you had a bit of an ego. Was that from like, you didn't realize it at the time, but obviously you reflected back and realized a bit of an ego. Yeah. What do you think that kind of like led to that kind of egotistic kind of nature? Like, do you feel like there was anything particular?
Yeah, I've been reflecting on it a lot lately because I've been doing a lot of memoir style writing. And I think from a really young age, I've been obsessed with being good at things. And I noticed that people liked me when I was good at things. Like I was a teacher's pet at school. I liked being really good at hockey, and people seemed to like me when I was good. And that kind of fed into just like wanting to be the best. And then when I started to be quite good and making teams at an earlier age, I was like, oh, maybe I could be the best here. And started to maybe build a bit of an ego.
Well, not that it's a bad thing. I think ego is definitely useful for certain things to get yourself, especially to work and work hard at things. When things get hard, you want to push yourself a bit further. But do you feel like you had to strip, like obviously when you had your injury, you had to move back to Sydney. Did you have to realize you have to strip it back and kind of humble yourself a little bit and move forward?
Yeah, I think for me it was really sorting out probably a mix of things, but really sorting out my life away from hockey and not having hockey be everything to me. Because what if I wasn't good? What if it turned out like it has now, where I'm not playing anymore? Who was Lily going to be without hockey? So I think I spent a fair few years just trying to enjoy my life and create things outside of hockey that maybe kept me a bit more grounded and that I could connect with and spend time with, rather than having this one obsession.
So what? Oh, that's interesting. So what did you do in that time? It was just
what did I do? That's a good question. Well, I got really into uni. Like I did really like my uni degree. I eventually moved to Melbourne, and just through different jobs and people that I met, just finding different interests and different networks of people and friends, whether that was through work or family or yoga, just having different interests and networks, became quite important to me.
Did you keep hockey up at that stage, at like a club level?
Yeah, I was playing. So when I moved to Melbourne, I was in the VIS, and I was playing club hockey, Footscray, and then I started playing for Victoria at national level.
Yeah.
So, sorry, New South Wales.
So I'm not too sure about then, but now I know that the institutes, they take a lot of time with the athletes to kind of work out outside life, I guess, like uni, making sure they're all looked after from an athlete wellness kind of standpoint. When you were that age and younger, was that was that afforded to you at all, or is this just a recent thing that's been up in the systems?
It was still definitely when I was in NSWIS, like I was doing my my HSC, so that was quite important. And the coach I had at the time, who's still one of my favorite coaches, Anthony Thornton, he was quite big on making sure like schoolwork came first. So he was a good person to have on side. And we did have I can't remember what the program at NSWIS was called back then, but we did have those athlete wellbeing education officers that supported you with uni or high school, whatever you were up to. There was definitely that support in NSWIS and in BIS.
Yeah. So you were in Victoria playing well, and you got offered to come back, or they selected you to come back into the national program. Was that a surprise? Were you expecting that because you were focusing on the outside things as much, or was it still a focus, or like a little bit of a to make it back?
It was definitely still like a strong focus, and I'm still training really hard. I loved training. I loved working hard. And we had an AHL tournament in Perth at the end of 2017. I was playing for Victoria. And after that tournament, we won that tournament. Wait, was that the one we won? Or maybe we lost that one? I get the years confused. Anyway, but at the end of that tournament, 2017, I found out I was going to debut for the Hockeyroos in a tournament coming up in the next couple of months. I just remember being at that tournament and not really being something that was too strongly on my mind, but I played well. I was just having fun. I was in a really good headspace. And I remember when I got the email. So I used to work at, this is kind of embarrassing, but it was a great job. I worked at Grills when I was in Melbourne for like a year and a half. So fun. If anyone, Grills a burger joint. I don't know if you have overseas listeners, but I was making burgers. It was fun.
It's all right. Anyway. It's all right. Just my mum listens to the podcast.
Just your mum. And I was at work and checked my phone, and I had all these messages from people being like, "Oh my God, Lil, congrats!" And I was like, "What?" And then they're like, "Check your emails." So then I checked that email, and when you find out you're selected in the Hockeyroos for every tournament, you just get an email.
Yeah.
So I opened up this email and it had like the team list, and I squealed in like the restaurant and then just broke down crying.
Oh no.
And it was like, "What's going on?" I was like, "I need to go call my mum."
Oh no. That's hilarious.
It was a surprise not in that like, I wasn't good enough to be there, but just like I was just in a good space, and I don't know, we didn't have any big expectations, and it came about.
That's interesting because you hear a lot of stories from a lot of people who kind of, they take a step back, or they don't always put the sport as like a central being of themselves. They kind of, explore other things and still like, compete at a high level, but, take their time outside to like enjoy life, not to, when they're not at the club. I think, what is it about that? What do you think is that? Like, you're able to kind of recharge the batteries, when you're outside of the club environment, and then when you go in, you're 100%. Like, you know what I mean? Trying to say, it's an interesting kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it helps. One, I think it helps give perspective on life. Like, you're just playing a game, whatever sport it is, you're just playing a game. The result does not matter at all. Doesn't affect the world. Who cares if you lose? So just to get a bit of perspective that the score on the hockey game is not going to change the world. And then, I feel like maybe that's just the biggest thing, to get a bit of perspective on life, and then maybe get a bit more mature as well. Maybe that was a little bit it.
Did you? Yeah. During that time, did you do like journaling or anything like that? Because I know there's this company that do this journal. It's called Inner Game Journal, and they have this like little piece that has like your gratitude, like what are you grateful for, things like that. And that's also like a perspective thing as well, like being able to just sit back and to kind of take your head away. What's more important than the actual sport that you want to be good at is also what are you happy for outside of the sport, and it kind of puts things into perspective and what's balanced.
I don't recall doing that much before I debuted, but definitely in my first sort of year in the Hockeyroos. But I do remember a mentor of mine, my coach from Footscray in Melbourne. There were definitely still times where I was still really hung up on I wanted to be a Hockeyroos. I knew I was good enough to get there, but it just felt a bit out of reach. And he would often say to me, "How do you eat an elephant?" And the first time he said that, I was like, I don't know. He goes, one bite at a time. And so his mindset was always just, step by step. If that's where you want to go and get to, just take it slow. Like, there's no rush to get there. So that was probably something that helped me a fair bit during that time as well.
That's interesting. How do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? You don't think, because when you're in the moment, it's all so big and so hard, but it's just, it's like you lose one bite at a time.
Yeah.
So you got selected, you came back, you obviously moved back to Perth and all that. Yeah. And what year was that? 2015? I
debuted end of 2017, moved to Perth, start of 2018.
Yeah. So how did it all go on from there? So you moved back, you're playing, training. How did it all go? Did you fit in, eat well?
I hated it at first because I didn't want to leave Melbourne. I loved my life in Melbourne. I loved the city itself. And I just thought Perth was so boring and I didn't want to live there. And I was pretty against it at the start. And I was trying to work out a deal where I could still be in the team, but like just commute, or like FIFO hockey.
That's a long way to FIFO, Melbourne to Perth.
Yeah, didn't go down so well. Yeah. So I really had to, and this was advice from my VIS coach at the time, and a few other of my Victorian friends who were in the Hockeyroos, that I feel like you have to go all in with your life in Perth. Otherwise, it just wasn't going to work. And that's probably what I didn't do the first time. One, I was 18. I was a bit of an idiot. But I was also just disconnected from life in Perth, and I wanted to be elsewhere. I was out of home, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, when I decided to move, I made a big commitment to really throw myself into like, okay, I'm living in Perth now. This is my life, and trying to set my whole life up here, not just Lily's hockey life.
Okay. So how long did that process take? It was like obviously would have been an instant thing, or a month or two?
Oh no, a lot longer than that.
A lot longer.
Yeah, it was probably hard for the first, I'd say 6-7 months, especially with a lot of travel as well. And that's always the hard thing. You move to a new city for sport. You may be trying to make friends, whether it's maybe you're working another job or maybe you're at uni or I was even trying to make friends on like Bumble. Like there's Bumble for friends. I was like, I'm just gonna try and make friends anywhere.
Right.
But you might be in Perth for 2 weeks, then you go away for 3 weeks, and you come back for 2 weeks, and it's really hard to get some consistency in your life and new friendships. So yeah, it took a while to get settled and be comfortable with life in Perth, and probably meeting my partner helped a lot with that.
Well, there you go. So where did you meet?
Funnily enough, through hockey. He works for one of the hockey companies, Griffin, and I was looking for a new stick sponsor, and signed on board with Voodoo, who Griffin own as well.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
it's funny because I forget, like, well, especially the last couple of years, hockey, you haven't been able to travel much at all. Well, the national program hasn't been able to travel at all. And then you were saying 3 weeks gone, 2 weeks back. It's hard to kind of even have a job, have friends outside. Even if you uni, hard to catch up in uni. You weren't even there to study, all this sort of stuff. So yeah, it would have been very difficult to find friends or to have a life outside of hockey.
Yeah.
It's hard because it's such a national program. Clearly it's not, you don't make a lot of money. It's hard to kind of support yourself and have a job or find a job that lets you or gives you the freedom to go to training and do all the commitments you have to. What else did you do outside of hockey? Did you have to work, or did you were able to have do you have a what's it called? They have, you can go to a house.
House sitting.
Not house sitting. If you're like 18, you can go over. You got a sponsor house or something like that, isn't it?
Oh, okay.
I can't remember what it's called. Anyway,
I don't know what that's called. Anyway. I didn't have one of those. My first year there, I was finishing my last year of uni, but that was online. But it took up a fair chunk of time because I was doing that pretty much full time. So yeah, first year I was finishing off my uni degree, and then the end of that year I was starting to set up my own circular sportswear business. That has now been running for 3 years.
So you started that up after the year you came back, after you finished uni?
Yeah.
Because that sounds like it would be a massive task to kind of...
Yeah, it was. It was a hindsight again. What an undertaking. But yeah, so bit of a long story short, my business is called Stature. It's a circular sportswear brand that sort of came about with my frustration for sporting uniforms. With the Hockeyroos, like we get so much uniform every year and it's always packaged in plastic, made of crap materials, made overseas. And I was quite sensitive to sustainable fashion and ethical fashion. And so I did a bit of research into the sporting uniform industry and found a lot of stuff I didn't like. So decided that I'd have a go at it myself. Couldn't start a sporting uniform business straight away, so moved into general sporting, running, apparel. I never call it activewear because I hate that word. So
do you take offense to activewear?
Yeah, I do. Like, it's not activewear. This is like clothes when you're actually exercising, not getting a cup of coffee.
Yeah. Fair enough. So you got into that. So that, because it was 3 years, like, how did you get started? Like, how do you start one of them? Like, do you just find, like, Google how to start a
oh man, the stuff you Google when you're starting a business is always so funny. But yeah, I was Googling everything. I didn't know how to start a business. I knew nothing about the production of clothing, marketing, anything like that. So yeah, a fair bit of research went into it at the start. And I mean, how did I don't know, just a whole lot of research. Like, I wanted to know, I was really I've become a bit of a fabric nerd. Like I'm really obsessed with how the fabric of all of our clothing is produced. So from the fiber, where it's grown, what it's made out of, the impact that has on the soil, or if it's not a natural fiber, the impact that it's had on its extraction or its production, where it's made, how it's put together, what impacts that has on the environment and people, and then how that gets turned into a garment. So yeah, a lot of research, a lot of nerding about, and yeah, launched Stature in 2019.
Oh, wow.
Oh, so that's only 2 years, but yeah. 2 years?
That's wild.
What year? I don't know where we are.
Did you, so like, it's obviously, starting a business is very expensive. How does it, like, did you have to take a loan out to start, or it obviously would have been a big risk to start?
Don't start a product business is my first advice. No, it's been great, and I do love it. But I was just a good saver, so I had it was all my own money, which was smart. I don't have any debt. Just don't have any savings anymore. But yeah, I was pretty adamant on getting it self-funded and up and going. I'm in a stage now where I do really need a bit of an influx from other sources to not to keep it viable, but to keep it as something that can be making profit.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm sure I'll tag it all down the bottom in the comments and stuff. Everything. So, we'll shout it out, make sure everything's tagged, and do the best to try to keep it going for you, because I know, especially starting a podcast is not easy, and try to get people to listen to it and to share it out there is important. So more reach is the best. Is it you that sits at the top? You don't have anyone else involved? You're the CEO?
No, it's just me.
Yeah,
it's just me. I've had my auntie help out a little bit just with like graphic design stuff, or she's sort of just been a bit of a mentor, a bit of a back and forth for me. But yeah, it's just been me.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So you went into you got back into the hockey, you took a year. Was the goal to make, so you went in, was after the Rio Olympics you joined back up, so 2017. Yeah. Was the aim was Tokyo, right?
Yeah.
So what?
For sure.
What happened there? So let's go.
Oh Lord.
2019.
So 2019 comes around and we have Pro League, which was awesome, but also wasn't awesome. For those of you who don't know, Pro League was this home and away series across the world for the 8, not the 8 top teams, but the 8 teams in the world who could afford to do Pro League. We're basically traveling from one country to the other to just play one game in this big 6-month long tournament. It was pretty cool, but it was a lot of travel, and that really wore me down in the end. It was 2019. Then we qualified for Tokyo Olympics against Russia, played my 50th game that game. And then 2020 rolls around and I'm fit. Preseason's been great. Everyone's excited. It's the Olympic year. Feeling pretty good. And then this like COVID thing pops up. Oh, what's this coronavirus? And slowly but surely over the end of February, March, the world starts to change, and then we find out that the Olympics have been postponed. And look, there's a lot I can get into, so I'm going to give you the short version and then you can throw questions at me.
Yeah.
So for those of you that don't know or haven't read upstream, I was training for the Olympics. COVID happened. I was actually really relieved because I was miserable, but wasn't admitting it to myself. And then, our program got shut down for a couple of months. The Olympics got postponed to 2021. I was in a pretty dark space, not sure if I wanted to, or not sure if I could continue in the headspace that I was in. Asked to take some time off away from the program to look after myself. They said no. I said, see you later. So I didn't want to be involved in a program that operated like that. And now here I am. Ask away.
So probably I want to go back to, I think, because I read upstream, and then one of the things that stood out to me was the qualifying game against Russia. And you said, as you kind of do a pre-game kind of thing, you sit around, just you girls, and the sense of the room was that everyone was scared, but no one was admitting it to themselves because of the fear. That's correct, isn't it? That's top of my head.
Yeah.
So what kind of interests me was the fact that there was this, that I think there is this, everyone fears it, but then it's a fear of admitting it to yourself. What is that? Like, that's something that doesn't, and you felt like it kind of affected the room, the vibe in the room. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. We would, for maybe a year or so, we were doing this thing before a game. It was either the night or the day before a game. We would, sometimes it was the players, sometimes it was the players and the coaches. We would sit in a room, we'd go around in a circle, and it was a chance to try, I'm doing bunny ears, try to be honest about how we were feeling about the game, because big tournaments, big games, big rivalries that we're playing against, it's scary. You're going to be nervous. Like, you're not walking into a game against Holland feeling like absolutely fine. So yeah, it was these circles were a chance to just voice how you're feeling, and hopefully just by voicing it maybe calmed the nerves, or you could get some help from someone, or come game time, your teammate, knows a little bit more that you're feeling a bit off today and can talk you up a little bit more. So yeah, in this, it was our so we had to win against Russia to make the Olympics, and it was a game we should have won. Like, Russia were ranked outside the top 20. We'd never seen them play live. We just had a few bits of footage from Euros, I think it was. So yeah, a bit of an unknown opposition. And yeah, there was the huge pressure of having to qualify. And we're sitting in this room, and everyone sort of went around just saying their standard responses. Like, there were people I knew exactly what they were going to say, because they started saying the same thing every time. Yeah. And then that was no longer a truthful, honest. There's no way you feel that way before every game. I'm sorry, no matter how good of an athlete you are, like, your emotions ebb and flow. Yeah. And so it just sort of became these reel of responses, and I was getting quite frustrated at my teammates' inability to either reflect on their emotions and understand themselves, or be brave enough to admit things. And I think that was a big sense that I felt, that in this room there wasn't a sense of trust, whether with the coaches or without, that you could speak honestly and not be reprimanded for what you say. And even if it's just, I feel nervous today. What if you say you feel nervous, then you don't play tomorrow? Like, you're not on the starting lineup, you don't play as many minutes because the coach is worried, this person's nervous, shouldn't put her on the field.
Yeah. So there's you were scared of the repercussions of if you're feeling right or not. Like, if you felt, because if you felt you were nervous and then that's the wrong feeling to have over a game, then you'll be punished by a coach to sit out, but would the coach do that though? Like, you wouldn't, surely, you'd like to think that wouldn't happen. Was this, there's the trust broken down, the barrier, or there's no trust there?
Yeah, I think there was a lack of trust between the players and the coaching staff. Look, whether or not that did ever transpire, I don't know, but in general, there wasn't trust within our team. So there was no safe space to speak.
Then the thing like that is a mute point in the end, because you're wasting your time, because you're not getting anything out of it. Did you ever feel that you could be honest in there or not?
I mean, you've obviously read Mirrors, you've read Upstream and aware of where I've ended up today, because speaking honestly is something I stand by. And yeah, so I've always had the courage, I suppose, to speak what I felt was true. Sometimes that was a successful thing. Other times, yeah, I did get reprimanded for it, which I mentioned in Upstream.
Yeah. It's interesting because would you be aware that if you would be honest, that you could cost you a spot or could cost you a place in the side at all? Or you just didn't like the truth had to come out, whether it was you're saying the thing that you needed to say, no matter what the consequences were?
Yeah, I think for me, I never, maybe at the time I did, like as it got closer to the Olympics that were meant to happen.
Yeah.
I was, yeah, I did start to get nervous about my own selection, and there weren't any moments where I like chose not to speak up when the Olympics were meant to happen. But for me, the fear of non-selection or the impact that it might have on me never really made me fearful enough to not speak up, because I often, like, I felt like I was doing it for the team most of the time. Like things that I had to say were what everyone was thinking, what everyone was feeling, but everyone wanted to say. And yeah, I just always had this like strong pull that I had to say it, that someone had to say it. Otherwise, yeah, we'd just sit in this room of whys all of the time.
Was there like a moment in your life that you can point to where, because not everyone has like has that type of potential, like just to, yes, not be fearful, like to speak up and be honest. Was there a point in time where you were like, this is probably, or did someone say something to you that flicked a switch and said, I'm going to be honest like this from now on, or like, and not be afraid of the consequences, or is it just something that just kind of is a part of your personality?
I think it's a part of my personality, but
Yeah.
I do have I do have like a few memories at school of me like maybe like sticking it to the principal to like fight something righteous, like something stupid at school. But yeah, I think it's just been something ingrained in me, probably a little bit from my mum. Yeah, who just maybe like encouraged me to stand up for myself. And I think I have a bit of a sensitive heart, and that probably bled into standing up for others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there in that kind of period, and you feel like there was the trust in the team was lacking, did you feel like you were trying to bring the team together and get them to open up, but there was like a hesitancy to kind of feel the same way?
Yeah, I think our group was quite divided. I think there were people on board who, yeah, probably spoke up as much as I did.
Okay.
And then there were others who would probably never do that because they're consumed with their own selection, and I don't blame that attitude at all. Like I totally get it. But yeah, I think we're a bit divided on how to approach an environment that we knew wasn't working for us.
Yeah.
Some were just like, we've just got to accept it. Like, let's just get to Tokyo. That was the mindset of a few. Then there was, oh, let's like try, see what we can do. Like, let's be nice, but let's see. And then there are others who like, no, let's call it out. Like, let's say it how it is.
Yeah. I guess it's such a difficult situation as well because it was so close to the Tokyo Olympics that's really hard to, if what do you make changes so close, and what if it ruins the chance at the Olympics? But then all the way around, what if we don't ever change it? And nothing ever goes right again. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
and so you can definitely see both sides and to every other person's angle, but you know, how it happened, it's how it's happened now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then obviously you got denied leave essentially, and as well you wrote up in Upstream that you didn't get along well with the psych at Hockey Australia. Was that right?
Yeah.
Because it's such a difficult thing to kind of get down into it, and then the trust again. How does that kind of work your way around? Was there other avenues you could go down to speak to other people as well outside and get an opinion about how to approach the situation?
Yeah, so I was at the time seeing a psych through the AIS Mental Health Referral Network. So if your sport is governed by the Australian Institute of Sport, you as an athlete have access to psychologists in this mental health program. So if your sport, so if the psychologist hockey employees, if you as an athlete don't want to see them, but you still want to see a psychologist, you can see someone for free through this referral network, which is what I was doing at the time. Which, I mean, yeah, it's helpful, but I guess a psych necessarily isn't there to give you advice or take action for you. They're more of a sounding board.
Yeah.
Especially as a third party like that. So yeah, it was a really challenging time to have my mental health denied by people from the organisation of Hockey Australia who have a duty of care towards me. I felt very I think the terms like gaslit, like I felt a bit crazy. Like, was I really, maybe I am okay. Like there were thoughts like, maybe there's nothing wrong with me and I'm not making up, like I'm dramatizing it. Like maybe I'm fine. Maybe I should just shut up and keep going and get on with the job. But the more I spoke to my parents and my partner, who are very good sounding boards for making sure I'm not irrational, the more I spoke to them, I guess the clearer it became that, one, I was extremely unhappy, and not like, I don't like saying just unhappy, like I was depressed, I had terrible anxiety. Yeah, I was not well. And so one, that my feelings were real, and two, that their approach to that was not okay. So to have that confirmed by my support network was quite important for me to be able to make the decision I did to I guess sort of reject their ultimatum of either I'm in or out, and to say, well, I'm not wanting to continue, and then to also decide to speak up about what they had done.
Yeah, I think that's important as well, because I don't understand how. Was there ever like a clarification? They never went back to you after you rejected their ultimatum, like you said. Did they ever come back and say, I guess, I don't know, apologize or anything like that? Say, well, you know, what we did was wrong. We're sorry, blah blah. Or
we had a lot of meetings back and forth because eventually a lot of meetings and emails back and forth. And eventually I sought legal guidance through the Equal Opportunity Commission. Because I had spoken to a few mentors of mine outside of hockey, and this is where I think perspective away from sport helps. Because if you've only ever known sport, if you've never had another job or been in another environment, you don't necessarily know how an organization should run or how a workplace should operate. And this is a workplace. Yes, we're not getting paid a lot, but we are getting paid, and we are full-time athletes. So it's a job. And so to be able to see that or feel that this isn't how people should be treated. This isn't how I've been treated in other jobs. And then when you tell people from outside of hockey what's happened, their reactions, they're like, what the F? Like, that's not okay. And again, to be reconfirmed by other people who then were able to sort of guide me in what steps I should take next was really helpful. And for me, going down a legal path and also speaking out about it, the biggest driving factor there was I knew there was something pretty damn wrong with this organization, and I would not encourage any 7-year-old girl to pick up a hockey stick. And I think that was really sad. And I wanted that to change because hockey's a great sport. I've loved my years playing hockey, but my years playing for Hockeyroos were pretty damn sad. And I don't think it should be like that for anyone. And so I was really driven to give like a serious attempt to try and change that.
Yeah. I think it'd be pretty hard pressed to find someone who wouldn't agree with your situation. Like, there's some things that go beyond sport, you know, like basically looking after, you know, your friend, your like your neighbor that, you know, they've got problems, you help them out or whatever. But does it scar you now? Like, would you, you know, if you were to have kids, would you want them to pick up hockey stick? Like, would you want them to play hockey, or would you much rather prefer them to play a different sport? Because I can imagine, like, this, just because it happened in hockey, you surely you can find similar situations in other sports, you know?
Yeah, and that was sort of what I got at a bit in Mirrors. Is after I wrote Upstream, I had so many emails, like hundreds of emails. Upstream was read over 10,000 times. It was published in the Daily Telegraph. I had a lot of feedback from so many people from different sports, different industries who had similar stories. So yeah, I think no matter what sport your kid would play at this stage of the sporting world, maybe they wouldn't have a great, I'm maybe painting a bit of a bad picture, but I don't think it's just hockey. So if I had, it's funny because my partner obviously comes from hockey as well. He played for France. And yeah, sometimes like, if we have kids, they're never playing hockey. But I don't think I'd you know, see what they like, see what they want to do.
How are your feelings now towards the sport? Like, did you watch the Olympics at all?
Yeah, I did. I had this great advice. I met with this dude through work. His name is John Gardner, and I was sitting down with him maybe a couple of months before the Olympics, and he was asking me if I was going to watch them. And I said, "Oh, I'm not too sure. Like, I think it would be pretty painful to watch." And he said something like, "In my experience, moving towards fear has always been a good thing," or something like that. Or he's like, moving towards what makes you uncomfortable is a good thing. So I was like, all right, I'm going to watch every single game. And I did. And I watched all of the women's game, like all the Aussie women's games, and all of the Aussie men's games as well. And I loved it. I felt more emotional watching the men than I did the women. And the reason being is that when I see the men's team, I see a team that I would love to be a part of. I see their culture, their mateship. I don't like the word mateship, but their teammanship, their respect. I see that and I crave to be involved in a team like that at the elite level. Then I see the women's team and I know the ins and outs of it, and I didn't feel as emotionally connected to wanting to be a part of that team. I wanted to be at the Olympics for sure. But then I was also really happy watching the girls. I was happy they had a different coach. I was happy to see how well they were doing at the start. And yeah, even during the Olympics, one of the girls messaged me and said that a song came on while they were driving to the game, and they were like, "Oh, it feels like Lily's here," and that made me cry.
Oh, that's sweet. Well, that's good. You can kind of look back at it and kind of still be able to watch the sport and to have those feelings towards it. Did you where you spoke about the guys, you had sportsmanship, the respect. would those be like your core values to what would make like a good team in like air quotes?
Yeah, I would say honesty. I mean, I feel like just read Brene, anything Brene Brown says, like go do that. Like courage, honesty, vulnerability, respect, like, and a place where all of that, the ability to do that, you need to feel safe. Like safety. Let's make that like the key priority of a team. If you feel safe to be yourself, to bring ideas to the table, to perform bad, like that, I feel just like drives a much more healthy, successful culture than an environment of fear.
Yeah. Also, you said with some of that person said to you to walk towards what makes you feel uncomfortable. I think that's what most people are scared of being uncomfortable. And that's also a good thing, I think, in a team setting. Like taking back the game before Russia, people were uncomfortable to speak about how they were feeling, and I think there's something that's in us as the human race is to go through hardship and to be uncomfortable, and it's better for us to do that. Like we work through struggles and we become stronger. Like we're more resilient after the fact. And I think we live in a society now that everything is so comfortable. Like we've gotten a bit softer, and we live in with soft beds, soft couches. Like everything's, given to us easier, and we lose that innate ability to bite down and work harder. So yeah, I think that's an interesting fact that someone, when they said that to you, and I was like, that's definitely something that would work. And have you ever gone back and done stuff now that's been like, okay, this is a bit uncomfortable, but I'm going to work through it?
Oh, this whole year has been that. Whole year. Yeah, I've been looking into a pretty ugly mirror myself all year, and learning a lot about myself, understanding myself, seeing where patterns and behaviors have come from, and that's mainly been driven by this huge sense of loss of identity. Like I thought I had all these other interests and parts of myself outside of hockey, which I do, but hockey has been a significant part of my identity for so long. So to no longer have that has been really, really challenging. And so I've spent, a lot of this year looking into the void and seeing what's there or what can be there.
Yeah. So now obviously there's no hockey. Do you gone into writing? Like, is that where you've picked up from?
Yeah, I think that's really appeared and shown up as a really strong purpose of mine. Yes, my business is great, and I'm really fascinated and interested in sustainability and fabrics and except blah blah blah. But I think to get a bit spiritual, I feel like my true calling and what I'm meant to do is write. And yeah, really diving into that. That now.
Well, I read those upstream mirrors and all your blogs. It's very beautiful writing. So yeah, I think it's definitely your calling. So was there anything before that led you into writing? Like, or did you just kind of express like your feelings onto a piece of paper and it just kind of all just bled out? Because I feel like when I was reading, I was like, wow, you're bleeding it. It's all like out there.
It's all out there. Well, again, I am very much like my mother. My mum is an author, a children's author. Wow. And so I think, and my dad's a very creative person as well. And I think all three of us, me, my brother and my sister, are quite creative and have a sensitivity towards writing. I think going through school and uni, mum was often our editor. I don't know if that was ever allowed at school or uni, but we had an editor at home who would Mum was often teaching us how to write better and write tight, like make a sentence as powerful as you can be in a short space, so you don't use all these superfluous words. So yeah, it's been really driven into me, and I think as I've gotten older, I've just found a real connection with it as a way of making sense of the world.
There's one thing I wanted to go back in Mirrors. We talked about the zoning of violence. I think that was one of the things that is quite interesting, because I feel like, because I do dabble a little bit in martial arts, into the black belt karate. I've doing Muay Thai now, and the whole, like, everything. You obviously, martial arts is a very violent sport at the crux of it, but I've had people on the podcast, fighters on the podcast before, reading back and looking at fighters outside of the ring and the cage. They're most calmest, spiritual, maybe, but a bit more like they're just relaxed. Because I feel like, or even sometimes I see it myself now too, like after a week of training, whatever, and I just come home and I'm just zonked in. Not I'm zonked because I'm tired, but also I feel more relaxed because it's that feeling again of getting to ring, standing across from someone who's going to punch me in the face. Is that uncomfortable position I'm in, and it's the fact that I'm humbling myself, putting my skills up against someone else's skills in the spar, and then testing to see how good I am, even if it doesn't work out. So it's interesting, because I feel like sport itself is kind of a regression of what violence is like. Because if you look back to I guess when we were hunter-gatherers and we would always fight over dominance and the tribes and all of this, I feel like sport is a regression of that, because you've got, if you look, fighting is probably the most primal of that. Like, you've got two people in the ring against each other, but then you go into team sports, you got, at the crux of it, is two teams against each other trying to vie for who's more dominant over the season. So I feel like violence is, like, it's hard to say violence because some teams is violence, but I feel like maybe you're getting more out of the violence of, sometimes there's positions inside a team, and you're fighting for positions in a team, and then there's violence. Like not that there's violence, you fight against each other, but there's you're in a kind of warrior, well, like you say warrior, but in a demon, I guess, trying to fight for a position, trying to one up your teammate because you want to make that spot. Is that kind of a little bit?
Yeah, yes and no. I think so. Where the concept comes from, the zoning of violence, is from an author, Tyson Yunakaporta, who's an Indigenous man, and he wrote a book, I think it maybe came out in 2019, called How Indigenous Thinking Can Save the World. Mind-blowing book. Go and read it.
That's it's linked at the bottom of that, isn't it?
Yeah. So Tyson, it was, I don't know, I can't remember how in depth in the book it was, but he talks about how we have these very privileged lives, that there's no violence, when, as you were saying, way back when, our lives were full of violence to be able to survive, to work out who's dominant. And then as we've become more westernized, more white, more privileged, violence has been put to the fringes of our cities, into like suburbs where let's not, I live in Claremont, let's like pretend what's happening out in, I don't know Perth that well, in Armidale, doesn't matter. Putting it into the like subgroups of society that we don't have to pay attention to is the privilege. And then I started to reflect on that a little bit about sport, that it's a place where we've put violence, not that sport is violent and like blood and bones and whatever, but a place where people can be aggressive and fight, and we can sit back and separate that from our daily privileged safe life and let that just be a space where that's acceptable. And I haven't quite yet fully made sense of all of that, but it was just a little thought that I had of how just the separation of having this safe life, but then letting violence occur in sport. That's just, I haven't yet quite made sense of it.
It's interesting because you're 100% right, because why can two people go and tackle each other on a football field, and I can't go run across the road here and tackle someone? There's really no difference in this fact that it's sport. Do you feel like as well, because it's a sport, it's like a social gathering of everyone, and it's a spectacle. It's made as a spectacle for people to let out an emotion. Or for people to go and watch, and it's an emotional outlet for someone like who's been sitting at the desk all day and they're so angry at their boss, and they can go to the football ground and yell and let all their emotions out. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's one of those things
Also, what you were saying before about how you, at the end of the week of training and doing martial arts.
Muay Thai, martial. I'm doing Muay Thai now.
Muay Thai. Yeah. Like how relaxed you almost feel.
Mm-hmm.
Is that sort of what you said? I've been thinking about that a little bit on the role of sport in our lives, in that we do it's not an addiction, but we get all these endorphins and we love it, and we get these like really good feelings that at the end of it we're like, oh yeah, that was good. And I've been when I finished playing sport, I was like, man, I'm never going to get that again. Like, where am I going to get that from? That like sense of like being in flow state. Where else am I going to get that? And I think what sport gives us, no matter what level you play at, is this opportunity to just be present in the moment.
Oh yeah.
So if
100%.
you're training lots of times a week, that's so many hours that you're present, and what that does for your mind, for your soul, for your spirit, for your body is like, you're zenned out by the end of the week because you've spent more time being present. And I think for those that don't have sport in their life, they're missing that opportunity. But I've now trying to work out, okay, if it's not sport, if it's not hockey 10 times a week that's making me present and putting me in flow state, what else can?
Well, if you do take up any form of martial art, you are probably the most purest of presentness, because if you're not present, you're getting punched in the face or you're getting hurt.
Exactly.
So, it's one of those things. It's also because you're not connected to anything. Like, you don't have to look at a screen. And you have to work on you have to work on the skill. Like, you don't have a choice. If, like I said, if you're sparring, you got to focus on your opponent and what he's doing, and you got to think, what are you going to do next? And it's a big mind game of chess, because is he throwing a feint? Is he going for it? Or, is he going to throw a kick? How am I going to reply? Am I in a position where I can put him in the corner and I can wail on him, I guess? And it's all different things like that. Have you heard of Miyamoto Musashi? No, he's a sword saint from the 1500s in Japan, and he fought over 60 fights to the death and won them all. Massive, crazy life in Japan. Challenged all these people, played all these different mind games with the different people who was going to fight with. At the end of all of it, he became a recluse. He went up to this cave and wrote the Book of Five Rings. And it was all about was nothing about like the art of fighting itself. It was all about his philosophy, which this book became his Bible for his students, was about like poetry, writing, all the different arts, and it was all about becoming a whole person. So it wasn't just about the fighting, was the training. It was about, being able to, a true martial artist was being able to like take a breather and being able to speak well, like being able to communicate effectively, have poetry, art, all this sort of stuff as well. So it has a book as well, which I've read. It's not that long.
That ties in all very nicely with this podcast episode. I'll have to
Have a read of it. It's
Yeah,
very
I'd be
good, very
curious
interesting.
to read that.
And he doesn't got anything, it doesn't have anything to do with his like fighting or anything like that. That was just a bit from I've learned before, but it was all about the philosophy of how to live, which was he taught it. And then funny thing, he finished it. A week later, he died. Yeah, so he had, I don't know what cancer, some sort of cancer, but yeah. But
right.
he became a recluse because he's young. I think one of his only son passed away. So 6 months he spent in a cave as a recluse and wrote this book. It's quite interesting.
I'll definitely have to give that one a read.
So you say now, would you, I don't know, maybe 5-10 years down the track, would you ever pick up a hockey stick and pick me up hockey or anything like that? Or is it all gone now?
I've ebbed and flowed a little bit with the answer to this over the course of this year. I was thinking that I'd move to Europe next year and go play over there and, you know, get paid, still play somewhat professionally, and see where that would take me. But I'm really curious to understand myself away from hockey and what this body can do without that identity. So that's sort of guiding me at the moment. I'm sure in 5 years, if I want to go have a little hit of club hockey, I might go and do that. But yeah, for the foreseeable future, I'm taking a big step away from that whole world.
Yeah, for sure. And you said earlier about your yoga. Do you find that you're able to be present in that and take your mind away from everything else?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's sort of where I had this realization. I was really quite disheartened and maybe had a bit of depression over the fact that I wasn't going to get this flow state experience anymore. And then I was on a yoga retreat and I just remember, I just had this vision in the middle of a class and I was going down into chaturanga, so it was a half push-up kind of thing, and I just saw my hands on the mat and just connected with some sort of spirit. I was like, oh my God, I'm in flow state. And then I was I'm going to keep experiencing this my whole life. It doesn't just have to be hockey or sport. It definitely shows up in yoga. And then I sort of realized, it shows up when I'm engrossed in a good book or I'm having a really good conversation and you're just wholly present. Yoga is certainly a really good tool for that for me.
That's interesting because even now thinking back to when I was younger, and then I did my karate when I was younger, very primary school into high school kind of years. And then once I left school and went to uni, I ended up finished playing sport by then. And obviously when I moved into coaching sport, you don't have time then to play sport yourself. And then I moved over to Perth. And then I was kind of thinking I'm working out and then I'm coaching, but I don't do anything for myself. I'm not doing that flow state kind of thing myself. I'm not really, lifting weights and running or doing whatever type of cardio is some form of that struggle, but it's not really, I'm still on my phone in the gym, I'm still connected to the world. And then I was like, well, I'll go. And then I was watching MMA at that stage. I was like, well, I joined a Muay Thai class. And then I feel when I first started getting back into it, I was like, this is it. For some reason, I've done a full circle. I did the martial arts when I was younger. And now, I'm an older adult, I'm back to where it started. And I remember how much I hated doing it when I was younger. And mum and dad used to just force me to go. Because I guess I know maybe it was a bit of a struggle thing that they wanted me to do. And it was all about just get your black belt. It was just keep working. It took me almost 6 years to get my black belt. So it's one of those things you have to struggle to and get it. And then you see the rewards I guess now that I'm 27, and you see the value, I guess, of hard work and persistence.
Yeah.
Do you ever kind of, I don't know, maybe now have a kind of goals or have anything that we work towards, but it's challenging, but you afraid to work towards, or like if that kind of makes sense?
Not really. I think
Maybe
I definitely
if I word the question
still.
better, how about if something that you wanted to do, but maybe you're too afraid to try?
I don't think I fall into that category of people. I think I generally, yes, step towards things that, if there's something I want to do, I'm generally pretty good at finding a way to go about doing it. But for me at the moment, I'm trying not to do that, in that I get these ideas like, yeah, I want to do this, I want to do that. And it can be quite obsessive, or it's really ambitious and it's ego driven. And I'm just trying to take a step back of not chasing things, and being a bit more okay with just like right now.
That's interesting. Do you still feel like you have that ego, like when you were younger? Do you still feel like it's kind of there? Kind of.
Yeah, I'm a really ambitious person, and I want to save the world and change the world and like do all these big things. And I definitely have a brain full of ideas. But I just since finishing sport, I'm sort of realizing how much in a lot of aspects of my life, my ambition and my ego doesn't serve me that well. Like it makes me more anxious and more unhappy about who I am and where I am. So I'm just trying to like quieten that ambition and drive, still be guided by things I'm passionate about, but just calm it down a little. Don't need to change the world.
Oh, you can never. It's interesting. So you constantly, you have to kind of put yourself in a situation where you kind of have to just relax, just reminding yourself where you are, who you are, where you are, not to get too ahead of yourself, I guess.
Yeah, because I think even with my business, I had really big goals and ambitions for that, but it's been bloody hard. And I mean, the vision that I have, maybe it won't come to fruition. Maybe it's not meant to come to fruition. So, do I keep trying to chase that to like satisfy an ego of how it should turn out? Or do I pivot and be okay to pivot? And same with hockey, like I don't know if I can swear on this podcast.
Yeah, swear, go for it.
Like, fuck, that didn't turn out at all how I wanted it to. Like, my ego is massively hurt by that. 7-year-old Lily is so upset, is heartbroken that she hasn't gone to the Olympics. Like, I wanted to be the best player in the world. That's not going to happen. That wasn't going to happen. But this vision of everything I thought hockey would be hasn't turned out that way. And that, for parts of me, that still really hurts. For other parts of me, I'm stoked about what I've done and the decisions I've made. So yeah, just trying to calm the mind these days.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Do you think that, being like having dreams like that when you're really young is kind of not bad, but like, kind of gets in the way of what can happen when you're old? Like, because obviously you say you're 7 years old, but when you're 7, what do you really know about,
Yeah,
just because you're good at hockey when you're 7 and you really want to be the best doesn't mean, like, it's still okay not to be the best,
Yeah, I think I'm sure heaps of young girls who had that dream as well and do even now. And I think it's totally fine to have that dream and have any sort of hopes and dreams when you're younger.
Maybe holding on to the dream for too long. Is that something that...
I think maybe placing your worth on that dream.
Yeah.
That's, I think, where we all go wrong.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm looking at changing.
So
whether I am the best hockey player, whether I have the best business, whether I become the best mom, like that's what, like,
yeah.
Let's not place my value on those things.
Just be a good person, but it's so hard because you still have to place. Maybe we're thinking about it too much.
It's definitely hard in the world of sport, because you're driven to perform, to be the best, to win, and I think when you're in that world, 100% like be driven by that, but don't let that success or failure like define the value you have of yourself, because you still have value whether you're good at sport or not, whether you win an Olympic gold medal or not. You are still a valuable person to your parents, to whoever in your life.
Yeah. Well, so we'll take a side step from that. Where, if you were to have dinner with any 4 people, who would you choose and why?
I was curious. I was like, does he have any like questions I should like this that I should prepare some good answers to?
I want the thought process. I want you to think out loud.
Okay, 4 people. Can they be dead or alive?
Yeah, anything.
Or do
you can bring them back. You can bring them back.
Okay. Number 1, Anne Frank.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Quick reason for that. 13-year-old girl wrote one of the most amazing pieces of literature. Mind-blowing. In really hard circumstances. Number two, Glennon Doyle, who is an author, who wrote a book. She's written a few books, but one of her books is called Untamed. And that is where I first read that quote from Upstream. Amazing author, really pushing for women to not be trapped by the cages we get put in. Number 3. These are good questions.
This is good because I haven't had those 2 have not been mentioned yet. So it's good.
Okay.
Keep it going.
Okay. 100% Steve Carell.
Oh yeah.
I'm just a huge Office fan. I'm
The Office.
Obsessed. I've watched it like a million times over. Like when I'm anxious, I just put on The Office, and I love him, and he just sounds like such a nice guy, and I just love to sit down and have a cup of tea with him.
Yeah, nice.
And then number 4.
This is it. You don't have any more.
I know. I'm just gonna say, this is hard. Just probably on more of like a spiritual path would be this woman called Julie Piatt. Mm-hmm. She is Rich Roll's wife. I'm not sure if you've listened to the Rich Roll podcast. Anyway, he's an ultra marathon runner, and he has this epic podcast called the Rich Roll podcast. Yeah. And it's a lot around, it's on everything really, but wellbeing, mindset, spirituality, food. Anyway, his wife, Julie Piatt, she's just a bit of like a spiritual guru, and I'm just quite curious about the work that she does, and I just love to meet her and see what would happen.
Where would you go? Where would you go for dinner?
Oh, where would I go? Was that part of the question?
No, but this is just an extra part.
It would be different for everyone, or do we all have to be together?
You all have to be together. It's a big dinner, like a.
Okay, we would all go somewhere in Italy to like a little hillside and have some like freshly produced meal that we've all cooked together. That's just come from the farm that's over there.
Some cold meat, prosciutto, and cheeses, provolone cheese. Yum. That's perfect. And some wine, red wine.
Yeah,
perfect.
That's it.
That sounds awesome. That's probably the best. Oh, sorry for everyone else who's listening. That's probably the best one. That's awesome. You mentioned that you like to put on the office when you feeling anxious, and do you have anything else that you like to do to take yourself away from when you're feeling stressed, anxious, or anything like that?
Yeah, so office is definitely a good one, but it's a bit of a crutch, I'd say. I'm not sure it's the best thing to do. Because it just takes you away from reality. But I come back to this advice my sister once gave to me. It's from a guru, I don't know who, but often when I get anxious and am creating stories and narratives in my head that aren't real, she says, come back to the knowns and work out what is known and unknown. So sometimes when I'm like worrying about something, I'm like, okay, what are the actual facts of the story? And just try and separate what I've like created, what my anxiety has created versus what's actually real. So I found that really helpful over the last little while. And journaling is just a really good one for me as well, to sort of just get things out of my head and onto paper, because there's a lot happening in this head.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Breaking it down. Do you write them down?
No, most of the time, like with knowns and unknowns, I often I say it out loud. Like I have to tell myself out loud what the facts are.
Do you feel like going through what you've gone through, having gone through everything you've gone through, knowing what you know now, and putting yourself back into the Hockey Australia camp a couple of years ago, would you be able to cope better, or do you think it was sort of gone the same way?
Yeah, I'm going to say it would have gone the same way, because I don't think it was about coping. I think it was an unhealthy environment that you either just, and I don't want to completely, I'm not wanting to disrespect any of my teammates, but because I do have a lot of respect for the girls that are still there, but I think to survive, you've just got to like close your eyes, head down, bum up, and not that they don't care, but just be so driven by your goals.
Okay. A bit more.
So,
maybe
I don't think it would have been different.
Yeah, it's a bit more of a you look after yourself type of thing. Yeah. Interesting. Anyway, last question to finish off. This one comes from Uncle Frank, who's the number one listener of the podcast. Hello, Uncle Frank. You sent this question. He sent through a whole bunch of questions a while back when he listened to when the podcast first came out. He listened to about a whole bunch of them over the Easter break, and then he sent me a list of this long text messages of questions. And I said, I can't ask all of them, but I can ask one. Are you ready for it?
Yeah.
If nothing was impossible and money wasn't an object, what would you do?
I would set up a village in New South Wales with my family, where we all lived on this shared land and grew our own vegetables, and we had a yoga retreat. And then I would do the same thing in France with my partner's family, so that we could commute between the two and just live on the land and serve our souls.
Yeah, wow, that's cool. Like a homestead, live off the land.
That's the vision.
There's something, something like.
But land is expensive in Australia.
But money's not an object, so I don't have to worry about it. So.
I know, but in
real
life. In that scenario, in real life, far out.
Well, do you want to leave? Do you want to shout anyone out? Do you want to say anything? Mention anyone? Thank
I'll say,
anyone?
hey mum, you're probably gonna listen. I'll send it to you. I don't know, for anyone who's listening, if any hockey girls are listening, hi, hello, and I hope you're doing well. And yeah, thanks for having me, Matt. It's been awesome.
No worries. I love having you. Mention where can we find you? At Lily.
Oh, okay. You can find me on Instagram, which I never use, at Lily Brazel. So if you do want to contact me, send me a lovely email that I can read over a cup of tea. You can email me at lilykbrazel@gmail.com. That's LILY. You can find my name on Matt's thing.
Yep.
Find me on Instagram. You can find on email. Sorry, you can find my business on Instagram though. Stature Australia.
Yeah.
You can find my writing at lilybrazel.com.au.
Do you have a podcast as well? I think I saw you had a podcast.
Yeah, I was running a podcast through Stature. It's called The State of Us. I was running that through most of 2020, and that was looking at interesting people who gave a shit about the world.
Oh, there you go. Perfect. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much. I got a very interesting, very in-depth podcast. I loved every minute of it. I love your writing. So I think you mentioned something, you're writing memoirs or anything like that. I love to read them. So whenever they come out, hit me up. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast. And thank you everyone for listening.
Thanks.